One forged signature. That's all it took to erase Nora Callahan's entire life. Her husband was barely cold in the ground when a well-dressed con man showed up at her door, asking innocent questions about property lines. 2 months later, the sheriff handed her an eviction notice. For her own land, the paperwork looked perfect. The courts sided with money. And just like that, a widow with calloused hands and an honest deed became a trespasser in the home she'd built with her bare hands. Most women in her shoes would have disappeared. Nora did disappear, but not to hide. She was preparing for war. She burned everything she couldn't carry. The house, the barn, every last board. If that swindler wanted her land, he'd get nothing but scorched earth. Then she walked until his name meant nothing, and found something she never expected. An ally. A fight worth winning. And proof that the truth, once it catches fire, burns brighter than any lie. This story will remind you of one unshakable truth. You are never too alone to fight back, and you are never too broken to rebuild. Every woman who's ever been underestimated, cheated, or told she was nothing without a man, this one's for you. If you believe the underdog deserves to win, stay with me until the end. And when this is over, hit that subscribe button and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far Nora's story travels tonight. Now, let's begin. That morning, Wade Harlow saw smoke where it had no business being, rising from the old Miller cabin. He was a man who ran his 12,000-acre ranch with discipline, and that thin column of smoke felt like a direct challenge. He didn't build the most respected operation in Ash Hollow by ignoring problems. He pointed his horse toward the smoke, a good 2 miles out on his western pasture. Nobody had lived in that cabin for 5 years, not since he'd bought the 100 acres it sat on. It was too remote to be useful, too broken down to fix. Yet the smoke was steady, a sign of someone settling in. As he got closer, he saw the place was tidied up. The yard was swept clean, and the busted old fence was standing straight again. This wasn't the work of a drifter just passing through. This was someone putting down roots on his land. Wade didn't panic, but he knew that out here trouble could show up quiet and stay for good. He slid his rifle from its scabbard just in case. Wade dismounted 20 yards from the cabin and tied his horse. He walked up to the door, noting the roof had been patched and the door hinges freshly oiled. This person was planning to stay. He stood outside and called, his voice firm. "This is private property. You have 1 minute to show yourself." The door swung open, and the person standing there was not what he expected at all. It was a woman, maybe 30 years old, looking at him with a calm, steady gaze. She wasn't scared or defiant, just meeting him as an equal. Her clothes were worn but clean, and her hands looked like they knew hard work. "Mr. Harlow," she said. It wasn't a question. She knew exactly who he was. "You have me at a disadvantage," Wade replied, his mind racing. She'd been here long enough to learn his name. "Nora Callahan," she said, offering no excuse. "This cabin is on my land, Mrs. Callahan. I don't remember giving anyone permission to be here." "You didn't," Nora said, stepping aside. "But I am here. You might as well come inside before you decide what to do about it." Wade knew he should have ridden back for his men, but her quiet confidence made him curious. He ducked inside, and the sight stopped him cold. The place was spotless. The floor was scrubbed, the stone fireplace rebuilt, and a neat bed sat in the corner. On a small table there were books and what looked like surveyor maps. "You have been busy," Wade said, taking in the small, orderly room. "I needed a place where no one would think to look for me," Nora said. She poured coffee from a pot warming by the fire. "I figure you want to tell me to leave." She handed him a tin cup. "But you're a man who calculates things. You saw the new fence posts. You're wondering if I am a problem, or maybe something else." Wade took the coffee. It was strong and good. "You know a lot about me." "I listen," she said. "You're tough but fair. You came to check on the smoke yourself instead of sending your men. And you're still here listening. Your curiosity is winning." "Why are you hiding?" Wade asked. "The law," she answered, then corrected herself. "Lawyers, which is worse. The law has rules it pretends to follow. Lawyers just have leverage. Do you think living on my property will keep you safe from lawyers? I figure being where nobody expects, doing work that needs to be done, makes me harder to spot than hiding in some town." Nora set her cup down. "The Miller cabin has been empty for years. You never used it, never visited it, and by the looks of it, you never gave it a second thought. I can live here, take care of it, and you would not even know I exist. My only mistake was needing coffee this morning." Wade glanced out the window. She was right. That corner of his property was just wasted land. In business terms, her presence changed absolutely nothing. "What kind of work are you able to do?" he asked. The question surprised her. "You are offering me a job? I am weighing my options. You have already shown what you can do. This cabin was a wreck. You made it livable in, 16 days? I have remote water sources that need checking and fence lines in the high country that my regular hands will not touch." "You are talking about a trade," Nora said. "The cabin in exchange for my labor. I am proposing a written contract with clear terms to protect us both." Wade put his coffee down. "You get a legal place to live through the summer, and I get difficult jobs done. At the end of the season, the deal is over unless we both want to renew it. No strings attached, just a fair exchange." Nora was quiet for a moment, looking around the cabin she had worked so hard to save. When her eyes met Wade's again, they were wary, as if his kindness made her more suspicious than any threat. "Why?" she asked. "You could throw me off this land easily. Why offer me a deal?" "Because forcing people is costly and messy. You want to stay, and I need work done. The answer is simple. I will have the papers for you by morning. You can look them over, and we can both sign. Or you can pack up and be gone by sundown tomorrow. Either way, you will know where you stand." As he was leaving, Nora called out, "Mr. Harlow, I want a clause that says at the end of summer, either of us can end it with no penalties. It just ends clean." Wade nodded, agreed. "I will wait for your papers then." Wade knew Nora Callahan was running from someone. That much was clear. The carefully repaired cabin, the remote spot she chose, and the sharp intelligence in her eyes told him she was a woman who trusted herself more than anyone else. He respected that. His own success was built on seeing potential where others did not. Nora needed to be invisible, and he needed a reliable person for the toughest jobs on the ranch. The math was simple. But something else was at play. It was the way she had stood her ground, adding her own terms to his contract instead of just accepting help. She was not a broken woman. She was a survivor making smart choices. By the time he got back to the ranch house, he was already planning the contract in his head. Simple language, clear duties, and fair pay for harsh work. And at the very bottom, the clause she had asked for, stating either one could walk away at the end of summer, no questions asked. That evening, he wrote it all out by lamplight, making sure there were no tricks or hidden meanings. Wade slept badly, and that annoyed him. He was a man who made his choices and moved on. But something about Nora Callahan threw him off his rhythm. She was an unknown factor, a puzzle he could not solve with his usual straightforward approach. Before the sun was up, Wade was on a fresh horse, riding out to the Miller cabin with the contract in his pocket. He found her already hard at work on the fence line. Her sleeves were rolled up and she was driving a new post into the rocky ground with a hammer. Sweat stained her work shirt and she did not pause when he rode up. She just acknowledged him with a steady look. She was not afraid of hard work, that was for sure. He held out the folded papers to her and she took them without a word. Wade rode up to the sound of a hammer striking true. He watched Nora work, not a single wasted motion. When she finally stopped, wiping sweat from her brow, she simply said, "You are early." He held out the contract. She read it over slow, her face a mask. When she finally looked up, her eyes held a flicker of surprise. "This is fair," she said. Wade just looked at her. "Were you expecting something else?" Her answer was quiet but sharp. "Mr. Harlow, when a man with your power deals with a woman who has nothing left, fairness is not usually part of the bargain." Nora turned the contract over and wrote something on the back. "This here makes it clear," she said, handing it to him. "Our business ends September 30th. No strings attached, no favors owed. Either of us can walk away with 3 days' notice." Wade read her words. It was smart, making sure everything was clean. "I can agree to this," he said. They shook on it, her grip firm and calloused. "Then we have a deal." He offered her a day to settle in, but Nora was firm. "I will start today." He promised to send supplies and maps of the water sources that needed checking. Wade paused at the door. "If those lawyers you mentioned come asking questions in town, they might find you." Nora leaned against the frame, unafraid. "I was careful. Besides, this contract says I am employed here, not hiding. It gives me the right to be here." He had to admit it was a clever move. He warned her the work was hard, that a broken leg out in that country could be a death sentence. Nora did not flinch. "I can handle it." Wade nodded, believing her. "My man Thomas will bring your supplies this afternoon. He is trustworthy and keeps his mouth shut." All day long, Wade could not shake the image of Nora from his mind. Here was a woman running from something serious, something that involved lawyers. She chose this hard, lonely place over a city to disappear. He could not stop wondering what kind of trouble could push a woman that capable to the edge of nowhere. He told himself it was not his business. Their contract was all that mattered. But as the stars came out that night, he had a feeling that some things have a way of getting complicated, no matter what is written on paper. Imagine losing everything, your land, your name, your whole life, all because some powerful men with forged papers and a crooked sheriff decided you didn't exist. That's what happened to Nora. She had to run, to hide out in the harsh Northern Territory where folks don't ask too many questions. But then, a tough but fair rancher named Wade Harlow offered her a job. The contract he gave her was clear and honest. It was more than work. It was a shield. This story is about how a single piece of paper can give a person the strength to fight back. For the first time in months, Nora slept soundly, feeling safe. Her new arrangement with Wade Harlow was not built on friendship, but on a simple rule of the frontier. Survival sometimes means accepting help from an unlikely source. Wade's man, Thomas, arrived with a steady horse named Sage, proper maps and good supplies. He was a quiet man, and his silence felt more respectful than the empty words of others. The quality of the gear told Nora that Wade Harlow was a man who paid attention to the details. The work was hard, covering nearly 40 miles of rugged country. Nora rode out each day to check the water sources, noting everything in a journal. The job was solitary, but the quiet purpose of it all began to heal her after months of running. She developed a steady rhythm. Ride at dawn, work through the cool morning hours, and rest in the shade of small line shacks during the brutal midday heat. The physical labor and the silence of the high desert gave her mind a chance to settle and grow strong again. She only saw Wade twice in those first 2 weeks, and always from a distance. He'd just give a short nod and go back to his work, trusting her to do her job without any supervision. That simple trust was something she wasn't used to. Then, on the 16th day, while she was repairing a rundown shack high in the pines, Wade and Thomas rode up. Wade looked over her work and said, "You're faster than I expected." Nora simply replied, "The work needed doing. Waiting would not improve it." Nora wiped her hands on her jeans and gave Thomas a nod. "I owe you thanks for those supplies. They were spot on." Thomas tipped his hat, a small smile on his weathered face. "Mr. Harlow is mighty particular about his gear. Equipment fails, folks die," Wade said, plain and simple. He stepped closer, checking Nora's work on the door. "This is solid work. You've done this before. My father built houses. I grew up learning the trade from him." A familiar ache passed through Nora's chest. "He taught me women should know how things are built." Wade ran a hand over the frame. Smart man. What happened to him? "Cholera. 8 years ago. My mother, too." She said the words flat, with no room for pity. "My husband followed 3 years later. Different sickness, same end." Wade looked at her, his expression not quite sympathy, but something like it. "You've seen a lot of goodbyes. This land takes without asking." Nora took a drink from her canteen, changing the subject. "The other shacks need work. I can fix them all in a month." "No, water is always first," Wade said. "But take Thomas with you on the repairs. He can handle the heavy lifting." Thomas just nodded. A flash of annoyance crossed Nora's mind. She had been managing just fine on her own. But then Thomas spoke up. "The shack by Copper Creek has a bad main beam. You will need 3 people just to brace it. And the one on Madson's Ridge is in country where you do not want to be alone." Her anger faded. It was not a judgment, just a fact. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow, if that works for you," Thomas said. "I will bring the timber. I will be ready." Wade was looking out over the valley toward his ranch. "How is the cabin?" he asked. "It is adequate." "That is not what I asked." Nora thought for a second. "It is more than adequate. It is a place that is mine to keep, a space I do not have to explain. I am grateful." Gratitude was not in the contract. No, but fairness was, and that is rare enough to be noticed. She stood near Wade. "Most men would have run me off or tried to trap me. You did not. That means something." He was quiet for a moment. "I do not believe in making a problem worse by trying to solve it," he finally said. "You needed a safe place. I needed work done. It is a simple trade. Is that how you see everything? Just a calculation?" "It is how I built this ranch." Wade turned to her, his gaze direct and sharp. "Feelings do not get the job done. Clarity does. And yet you are out here checking on the work yourself." A hint of a smile touched his face. "I like to see things with my own eyes." Thomas cleared his throat. "We should head back before the heat gets bad." Wade nodded and went to his horse, but paused. "Nora, if anyone starts asking questions about you, I want to know. Do not handle it by yourself." The change in his tone was clear. "I can take care of myself. I am sure you can. But you work for me now. Your problems are my problems if they affect this ranch." He swung into the saddle. "That is not charity. It is protecting my investment." He and Thomas rode off, leaving Nora in the quiet clearing. She realized Wade Harlow was smarter than people gave him credit for. He wasn't just a cold businessman. He had seen she was running from something and offered help in a way she could accept by calling it business. He gave her a way to keep her pride. Nora finished her work and rode back to the cabin as the sun went down. She thought about the man she worked for. He acted like everything was a numbers game, but his actions told a different story. He was a man of strategic kindness. It made him hard to figure out, but maybe easier to trust. The next morning, Thomas was there at dawn, just as he promised. They spent the day at the Copper Creek shack. Thomas was a good carpenter, and they worked well together in a comfortable silence. By the afternoon, the job was done. "You are good with your hands," he said, offering her the canteen first. "Wade said you had experience." "It means I know how to use a hammer," Nora replied. "Does Wade always check on people so closely?" "Only when it matters," Thomas said. "Are you worried he is digging into your past?" "I'm just wondering what kind of man he is." Thomas thought about that for a moment. Wade Harlow is exactly who he seems. He is fair, he is demanding, and he is honest. He does not pretend to be your friend when it is just business, but he remembers kindness and he pays back loyalty. That sounds like more than a boss. It is. I have worked for him for 8 years. He has never lied to me or cheated me. Thomas looked her straight in the eye. He has also never once asked me why I showed up here with nothing but my horse, or why I do not talk about my past. Some men respect privacy. Wade is one of them. Nora understood then. Wade's ranch was a place for people who needed a clean slate. Your history did not matter here, only your work. Imagine losing everything you ever built, your home, your land, your good name, all because of a lie on a piece of paper. That's the injustice that sent Nora running. This is the story of how one woman, an underdog on the run, finally found a place to stand her ground and fight back. Stick around to see how a little Texas grit can change everything. For a week, Thomas showed Nora the lay of the land. In turn, she helped him map out the ranch's water sources. She quickly saw that Wade Harlow's ranch was different. It was built on trust. Wade treated his workers like grown-ups who knew their jobs, not like hired hands he had to watch every second. It was the complete opposite of every other outfit Nora had ever seen, where fear was the only thing that kept folks in line. Here, loyalty was earned, not demanded. On the 8th day, they were heading down Madsen Ridge when everything changed. Thomas pulled his horse to a sudden stop. He held up a hand, signaling for quiet. Nora halted, her senses on high alert. Down the slope, 3 riders were making their way up the trail right toward them. "You know 'em?" Nora asked, her voice low. Thomas shook his head. "Nobody should be on this trail but our own people. It don't lead nowhere but our line shacks." His hand drifted down toward the rifle on his saddle. "They're riding like they got a purpose." Nora felt a knot tighten in her stomach. 3 men searching the most remote part of Wade's land. This was no accident. This was what she had been dreading. "What's the plan?" Thomas asked, looking to her for the call. "We meet them," Nora said, her voice steady. "If we hide, they'll know they're on the right track." They rode down to meet the strangers. The men were not ranchers. Their clothes were too new. The lead rider, a man about 50 with a tidy mustache, raised a hand. "Afternoon," he said. "Didn't expect to see anyone up here." "This is private property," Thomas said, his tone flat. "Harlow Ranch. Y'all are trespassing." The man feigned surprise. "Our apologies. We're surveying for a mining company. Must have crossed the line somewhere." "Mining surveys need permission," Thomas stated. "And Wade Harlow don't give it. You'll need to turn around." The man's eyes locked onto Nora. "And you are?" "An employee," Nora said plainly. "You heard him. You're on private land." "You just look mighty familiar," the man pushed. "Have we met? Maybe down in Ash Hollow? Or Blue Ridge?" The name hit Nora like a punch to the gut, but she didn't flinch. "We don't answer questions from trespassers," Thomas cut in, his voice hard as iron. "You've got 10 minutes to get off this land before I go get help to remove you." The man's friendly mask slipped. Something cold flickered in his eyes. He reached inside his coat, but Thomas's rifle was out of its scabbard in a heartbeat. The barrel wasn't pointed right at him, but the message was clear. "Keep your hands where I can see 'em," Thomas warned. The man's thin smile returned. He turned his horse. "Our mistake." They rode off without looking back. Thomas kept his rifle out until they were long gone. "Blue Ridge," he said quietly. "That's a town over in Colorado." "I used to have a life there," Nora said, her voice tight, "until someone stole it with a forged piece of paper." They rode on. "They'll be back," she said finally. "I should leave. I won't bring this trouble down on Wade." "That ain't your call to make," Thomas replied, turning his horse toward the main ranch. "Wade takes his contract seriously. Someone threatens his people on his land, it becomes his business." They found Wade in the barn. Thomas laid out the whole story, plain and simple. When he got to the part about Blue Ridge, Wade's sharp gaze fell on Nora. He listened until Thomas was done, then straightened up. "They'll be back," Wade said, "and next time they won't be so polite. They'll have papers and a name. Nora Callahan. Or Nora Carson," she added quietly. "That was my married name." Wade walked out into the yard and looked out at the mountains as the last bit of light faded from the sky. Finally, he turned back to her. "Tell me about Blue Ridge," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Tell me what they stole from you." And because Wade Harlow had proven to be a man of his word, Nora told him everything. She explained, "My husband Daniel and I, we owned 160 acres. It was good land, with water rights and timber." That evening, Nora finally told him her story. She and her husband Daniel had owned their land outright, but Daniel got sick and passed away 2 winters ago, leaving her to manage on her own. She explained that a man named Victor Crozier a crooked land broker, saw an opportunity. He preyed on people who could not defend themselves. Crozier forged documents, filed them with the county, and soon the law said Nora was trespassing on her own property. With the system rigged against her, she lost everything. He did not just steal her land, he tried to erase her entire life. The story finally came out, Nora's voice tight with old anger. She explained that the man she was running from, Crozier, specialized in making fraudulent documents look real. He came to my property right after my husband Daniel passed, she said. Acted all polite, claiming he just needed to check some boundary lines. 2 months later, the sheriff showed up with an eviction notice. Crozier had forged an entire set of papers claiming her land belonged to Daniel's long-dead uncle through a fake loan. It was all lies, she said, but the paperwork looked perfect. I fought him in court, but he had an answer for everything. I lost it all. Fighting it in court was a fool's errand. It would take months, cost a fortune, and that crook Crower would just appeal until I was broke. The sheriff knew it was fraud, I'm sure of it. But Crower had money, and I was just a widow. The lawman sided with the deeper pockets. He gave me 30 days to vacate, or he would throw me out himself. So I left, but first I burned everything I could not carry, the house, the barn, all of it. If Crower wanted my land, he would get nothing but scorched earth. Then I walked until his name meant nothing. The men you saw today, Wade, they work for him. I told my lawyer I would get my land back, and I reckon word got back to Crower. Men like that do not ignore threats, even from a lone woman. I will be gone by morning. I will not bring this trouble to you. Wade's voice cut through the dark. You will do no such thing. You have a contract, and you have earned your place here. I do not let scoundrels run my business or threaten my people. You do not understand what he is capable of. I understand perfectly, Wade said, stepping closer. I have dealt with his kind before. They prey on folks who are alone and cannot fight back. But you are not alone anymore, Nora. Thomas spoke up from the shadows. Wade is right. Crower is not used to pushing against a man with Wade's standing. It is not your fight, Nora insisted. It became my fight the moment his men set foot on my property, Wade stated flatly. Tomorrow I ride to Ash Hollow. I will start pulling the thread on this whole crooked scheme. It is not that simple, Nora warned. The paperwork will look perfect. Almost is not the same as impossible, Wade countered. I know folks who can spot a forgery a mile away. It will take time and money, but I have plenty of both. A sliver of hope, something she had not felt in years, began to rise in her chest. She had to ask, why? Why do this for me? Wade looked at her as if the answer was the simplest thing in the world. Because it is the right thing to do. Because I cannot stand men who get rich by ruining others. And, he added, because you rebuilt that cabin in 16 days and faced down 3 armed men without blinking. That kind of grit deserves to win. Inside, Wade's house was a surprise. She had expected something sparse, but it was a comfortable, solid home. It was a place built for living, not just for show. Wade lit a lamp and gestured to a large oak table. Sit. We need a better plan. He pulled out his account books. Now tell me everything you remember about those papers. Every name, every date. Over coffee, Nora laid out the whole rotten story. Wade took careful notes, his questions sharp and showing a keen understanding of the law. The signature on the loan, he said, tapping his pen. Your husband's. Could you tell it was a fake? Daniel's handwriting was very distinct, Nora explained. The forgery was close, but the slant was wrong, and the date format. Daniel always wrote month, day, year. The documents had it day, month, year. It was a small thing, but it was a mistake. Wade nodded, making more notes. Those are the kinds of mistakes that unravel men like Crower. Thomas suggested a plan. You own land all over this territory, Wade. You can request to see those documents, claiming you are worried about fraud affecting your own property values. That gives you a legal reason to look. Crower will hear about it, Nora said. Good. Wade's voice was cold as steel. Let him hear. Let him know his victim is not alone anymore. Fellas like Crower count on their victims being alone, Wade stated, his voice firm. But he is not used to someone pushing back. He will find out we are not afraid. Nora's fear was plain. He will use sheriffs and courts to run me off. Wade was already moving. Then we move quicker. I know a lawyer in Denver, Arthur Brennan. The best man there is for sniffing out fraud, and he owes me. We will expose Crower's entire scheme. Nora said quietly, I cannot pay for that kind of help. Do not you worry about the cost, Wade said, not looking up. Consider it an investment. Crooks like him start here, they could end up next to my land. We are stopping him now. It was a way for her to accept help without losing her pride. They decided Thomas would have men watch the property while Wade contacted his lawyer. Thomas then insisted, You will stay here tonight, Nora. It is not safe at your cabin. She knew he was right and accepted. After showing her to a small guest room, Wade paused at the door. Nora, this is not just about your property. Men like him get away with things because good people look the other way. Every time they win, it gets harder for the next person. He met her eyes. But I will not lie, it is also about business. You are a good worker, and I am not about to lose you to some two-bit swindler with a forged deed. I am just being honest about it. The sudden shift in her fortune was dizzying. This morning she was alone. Tonight her boss was waging a war on her behalf. She slept little, and when she came downstairs, the smell of coffee filled the kitchen. Wade and Thomas were already at the table going over their notes. The time for worry was over. It was now time for action. Wade looked up as she entered. I will be riding out to Ash Hollow within the hour, he announced. I can check the northern water sources, Nora offered. Keep things looking normal. Wade nodded. Fine, but you take one of the hands with you. No more going out there alone for now. After breakfast, as he prepared to ride out, Wade turned to her, his expression like iron. Remember this. You are not alone anymore. Crower is used to scaring folks who have nothing. He has never faced someone like me. He swung into the saddle. By the time I am done, Victor Croyer will wish he never set foot in this territory. That is a promise. Thomas gave Nora's shoulder a gentle squeeze. He means it. Wade doesn't tolerate bullies like Crower, not when it comes to what's right. Nora admitted, I am not used to folks fighting my battles. Thomas chuckled. Well, you are about to see a force of nature at work. Crower has no earthly idea what is coming for him. Later that morning, they prepared for the water inspection. Nora reviewed her notes while two of Wade's ranch hands, Carson and Miguel, stood by just in case Crower's men decided to show up again. As she worked, Nora's mind drifted to Wade riding toward Ash Hollow. For the first time, she felt a flicker of hope that the injustice she had suffered might not be permanent after all. When they got back, Wade was already in his office, looking pleased. The recorder in Ash Hollow confirmed it, he said. Crower's been filing his crooked paperwork all over the region, hitting isolated folks the hardest. Wade pointed to a stack of papers. I have sent telegrams to my lawyer in Denver and requested copies of everything Crower has filed in the last 3 years. I also gave the Territorial Marshal's office a heads up about his land fraud. Nora asked if they would investigate. Eventually, Wade said with a grim smile. But for now, it means Crower can't use the law against you without them getting suspicious. I made sure to mention my own holdings were at risk. Money talks louder than a victim's plea. My lawyer, Arthur, is on the first train from Denver tomorrow, Wade told Nora, his gaze steady. This is happening. We are not just talking about fighting back. We are tearing down Crower's whole operation. The sheer speed of it all nearly overwhelmed her. You did all this in just one day? Wade shrugged as if it were simple. I did what needed doing. That night, Nora accepted his offer to stay in the main house. Hiding was no longer the plan. At dinner, they laid out their strategy, with Wade explaining he would ride to other towns to gather more evidence. Wade had learned that Crower had cheated at least 4 other landowners, all of them widows or old-timers with no one to help them. It is a clear pattern, Wade declared. This is not just about your land anymore. It is about stopping a predator. The next few days were a blur of activity. Arthur Brennan, a sharp man in his 50s, arrived right on schedule. He shook Nora's hand firmly. "Wade's message was clear," he said. "Victor Crower stole your land, and you know how he did it. I need you to tell me everything." They spent the evening in Wade's office, with Nora explaining every detail of the fraud while Arthur took careful notes. He zeroed in on the errors she had noticed, like the wrong date format on the forged documents. "That is a classic forger's mistake," Arthur said, tapping his pen. "A handwriting expert I know in Chicago, a man named Whitmore, can prove these signatures are fake." The main problem, he explained, was getting their hands on the original documents. Thomas, who had been listening from the doorway, spoke up. "What if Nora files a formal legal challenge? Wouldn't that give us the right to see them?" Arthur considered it. "That would work, but it would also tip our hand to Crower. He would hire lawyers and start shredding evidence, making everything harder. I say we get the documents first, prove the fraud, and then we attack from a position of strength." Wade stood and walked to a large map on his wall. "The recorder in Blige County will not help us. But what about the paperwork Crower filed right here in Wyoming? We are residents. We can argue his fraud here hurts our own land values." Arthur's eyes lit up. "That is a creative angle. We could argue Crower is a threat to all property owners in the territory. It might just work. We could find the same pattern of fraud in his Wyoming filings and use that to challenge the Colorado documents." "Then that is our plan," Wade declared. "Tomorrow you and I will visit every county recorder within a 2-day ride. Thomas, you go find the other victims I heard about. See if they will share their stories." Nora listened, amazed at how quickly her personal fight had become a full-blown campaign. "What can I do?" she asked. Wade looked at her directly. "I need you to write down every single thing you remember about your home. The house, the land, the boundaries, the water rights, every detail. A fraudster works from maps, but a true owner works from memory. Your knowledge is a weapon Arthur can use." "I can do that," Nora promised, knowing the pain of remembering would be worth it if it brought justice. They worked late into the night. Arthur was brilliant, speaking about fraud with a fire in his eyes. "People think this is just about money," he said over coffee. "But it is an attack on the very idea of truth. Every fake signature, every false deed, undermines the trust our entire civilization is built on. Crower is not just a common thief, he is a saboteur." Wade nodded gravely. "Which is why stopping him is bigger than any single one of us." By the time they went to bed, Arthur had filled 2 entire notebooks with a plan of attack. At dawn, Wade and Arthur rode out to chase paper trails while Thomas left to find the other victims. Nora remained at the ranch, facing the hardest task of all. She spent the day rebuilding her lost home on paper, memory by painful memory. She wrote about the view from her porch at sunrise and the exact bend in the creek where she drew water. She did not allow herself to grieve. Instead, she turned her memories into weapons, crafting 10 pages of details so precise that no one could doubt she had lived and loved that land. Wade and Arthur returned at sunset, tired but satisfied. Wade poured 3 glasses of whiskey as Arthur spread documents across the dining table. "We visited 4 county offices today," Arthur began, "and Crower has been a busy man. We found 7 other property transfers that all follow his same wicked pattern. The forgeries are good, but they all have the same mistakes, the same notary seal in different counties, similar handwriting in the signatures. It is enough to prove a pattern of fraud." Wade sipped his whiskey, a cold fire in his eyes. Arthur then turned to Nora. "And I have good news for you. I found the Wyoming filing for your Blue Ridge property. Crower registered his fraudulent claim here too. It has all the same mistakes you pointed out. I have already made notes." Nora's heart pounded. "How long until we know for sure?" "My expert in Chicago is fast, 2 or 3 weeks," Arthur said. In the meantime, I've drafted a formal fraud complaint for the Territorial Marshal's office. Wade's signature on it will get their attention." Just then, Thomas walked in, looking grim. He poured a cup of coffee. "I found 2 of the other victims," he said quietly. "They confirmed everything, but they are terrified. Crower told one of them that accidents happen to people who make trouble." "That is how he wins," Wade said, his voice hard as stone. "He uses fear to keep his victims silent, to make them believe he is untouchable." Thomas nodded. "They believe he has sheriffs and judges in his pocket." Wade stood tall. "He wants people to feel helpless. Well, he is about to find out that we are not." The news about a man named Croker was bad. "He uses violence, or at least the threat of it, to intimidate people," Arthur explained grimly. "It is how these criminals work. They start with lies, and when that does not work, they get mean." Wade set his glass down carefully. "Then we have to move faster. Arthur, send that fraud complaint to the marshal's office immediately. That puts Croker on their radar." "But it will not stop him from trying to scare Nora," Arthur warned. "Men like him get more dangerous when they are cornered." "Let him try," Wade said, his voice like stone. "Nora stays here at the main ranch house. Thomas, I want a watch on all roads leading in. I want our people armed. If Croker shows up, he will not get anywhere near her." "Wade, you cannot make your ranch a fortress just for me," Nora said. "I am not," he replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I am taking proper steps to protect an employee from a known criminal. That is just my duty of care. This is a temporary fix, mind you. Once Arthur files that fraud complaint and the law gets a look at Whitmore's handwriting, we will have Crower dead to rights. We are talking weeks, maybe a month." Nora knew he was right. She remembered Sarah Hendricks, a woman so terrified she had to live in a boarding house instead of on her own land. Fighting a man like Crower required more than just courage. It required allies. "All right," she said softly. The next week was a whirlwind. Arthur filed the complaint. Wade started mapping out the full scope of the fraud. And Thomas kept the ranch running while making sure Nora was never out of sight. It was a strange feeling, being so protected yet so confined. It was safety, but it cost her a piece of her independence. On the 8th day, things got serious. Thomas was in Ash Hollow for supplies when he heard 2 strangers asking about a woman matching Nora's description. The store owner, a friend to Wade, played dumb. But the message was clear. "They are not even being subtle anymore," Thomas reported that evening, his face grim. "They are offering cash for information." Wade's anger was a quiet, dangerous thing. He asked, "Did you get a good look at them?" Thomas nodded. "Same fellas from the ridge, the one with the clean mustache and 2 others. They are telling folks they are here for mining surveys." Arthur looked up from his papers. "This is good news. It means Crower is getting desperate. A man sure of his legal footing uses lawyers, not hired guns. Desperate men get sloppy," Wade said. "We just need to be ready when they do." Their chance came 3 days later at the Ash Hollow Founders' Day celebration. Wade wanted Nora to stay safe at the ranch, but Arthur convinced him otherwise. "Hiding makes a person look guilty," he argued. "But if she is seen with you as your employee, it sends a powerful message. She has nothing to fear." So they rode into town, a quiet show of force with 4 ranch hands sticking close to Nora. The celebration was a loud, happy mess of folks from all over. Wade introduced Nora to his neighbors, telling them she was handling surveys for him. His word was bond in this part of the country, and folks who had seen her as a stranger now greeted her with a respectful nod. It was during the big community supper that Nora saw them. 3 men standing at the edge of the crowd, just watching. The leader with the neat mustache locked eyes with her, and a flicker of recognition crossed his face. "They are here," she whispered to Wade. He did not even turn his head. "I see them," he said. "Thomas, our boys are in position. They will not get near us." Thomas's hand rested near his pistol. "You want me to go have a word with them?" "No," Wade replied, his voice calm. "We let them make the first move, right here in front of everyone." Wade kept eating, a picture of perfect confidence. The three men spoke to each other, and then the leaders started walking toward their table. "Mr. Harlow," the man said, stopping a few feet away, "my name is Jacob Marsh. I am with a property firm, and I need a word with you about a legal issue. This is a town celebration, Mr. Marsh. Business can wait for business hours." Wade's tone was polite but cold as ice. Marsh just smiled. "I understand. We have been hired to find a woman named Nora Carson, who also goes by Nora Callahan. There are some legal matters in Colorado that need her attention." His eyes landed right on Nora. "I do believe this is the lady we are looking for." The tables nearby had gone quiet. Wade carefully set down his fork. "Mrs. Callahan is my employee. If you have business with her, you can speak to her lawyer." Wade gestured to Arthur. "This is Arthur Brennan, out of Denver. You can give any papers you have to him." Marsh's smile finally faded. He had come expecting to find a scared woman alone. Instead, he found her sitting with one of the most powerful ranchers in the territory, flanked by a city lawyer and armed men, all in front of 200 witnesses. "I'll send any official business through lawyers, but you should know, things back in Colorado are moving fast. Mrs. Callahan needs to deal with some property issues right away. If she doesn't, she could face more legal trouble." Arthur stood, and the whole room seemed to shrink around him. "I know all about those Colorado matters, Mr. Marsh. In fact, I'm the one who told the territorial marshal they were fraudulent. The papers your boss is waving around are likely forgeries. You can tell Mr. Crower that if he tries to push these fake claims, he will face criminal charges." When he said the name Crower, a nervous murmur went through the crowd. Folks knew that name, and it was tied to shady land deals that left good people with nothing. Marsh's friendly mask began to crack. "Those are mighty big claims, Mr. Brennan. You had better be able to back them up, or that is slander." "Oh, I can back them up, Mr. Marsh. I am looking forward to proving it in court. We can have experts look at those signatures under oath." Arthur's voice was clear and steady, and everyone hung on his every word. "I have certified copies of 7 different property deals that all look suspiciously the same. I have testimony from folks describing the exact same scam. When I am done, Victor Crower will be facing charges all over this territory, and every fake deed he created will be worthless." Marsh looked like he had been slapped. He took a step back, all his earlier swagger gone. "You will be hearing from Mr. Crower's lawyers." "I sure hope so," Arthur said with a cold smile. "Tell them to bring the original documents. The forgeries are a lot easier to spot on the real thing." Marsh turned and hurried away with his men. For a moment, the crowd was silent. Then everyone started talking at once. The mayor, a man named Henderson, walked over to Wade's table. "Wade, is it true? Is Victor Crower really forging deeds?" "Arthur does not make accusations he cannot prove, James. The evidence against him is solid." Wade spoke loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Crower targets widows and the elderly. He uses fake papers to steal their land right out from under them. Mrs. Callahan is just one of his victims. We have found at least 6 others so far." Henderson's face turned red with anger. "That is just wrong. A person's property is sacred. If you cannot trust your own deed, then our whole way of life falls apart." "That is exactly why we are fighting him so hard," Arthur said. "Men like Crower think their victims are too scared and alone to do anything. We are here to prove them wrong." The rest of the evening, people kept coming up to their table. They shared their own stories about crooked land deals or just offered their support. It turned out many had heard rumors about Crower but were too afraid to speak up against a man with so much power. By challenging him in public, Wade had given them the courage to come forward. Riding back to the ranch, Nora felt a mix of excitement and fear. That was a dangerous move, she told Wade. "It was necessary," Wade replied. "Crower likes to work in the shadows. We just dragged him out into the sunlight. Now everyone knows his name is linked to fraud. It will be much harder for him to cheat people, and if he tries to come after us, he will make mistakes. And those mistakes will just give us more evidence." Wade's voice was calm, but there was steel in it. "I meant what I said. We are not backing down. Crower is going to pay for what he has done." Unseen by the riders, a lone figure watched them from a distant hill. It was Victor Crower himself. He had come to see the situation with his own eyes. The widow he thought would be hiding in fear was instead out in public, protected by powerful friends. Crower knew right away his usual threats would not work here. The fraud complaint meant the law was already watching. And because the challenge was public, he could not simply make Nora disappear without drawing even more attention. He needed a new plan. He had to discredit the accusations before they turned into criminal charges. He would have to move fast and find people who were willing to bend the rules for the right amount of money. It was a big risk, but Crower had built his fortune on taking risks. Crower wasn't about to let Harlow expose his whole rotten operation. He struck back, and he did it using the law itself. Just 4 days after their public confrontation, a sheriff's deputy from Colorado showed up at the ranch. He handed Arthur a court order demanding Nora's immediate return to face trumped-up charges of theft and destruction. Arthur's face grew hard as he read the lies. It was pure retaliation, a legal fiction. The deputy gave them the bad news. Nora had 72 hours to go back on her own, or he was authorized to arrest her. Nora felt a cold dread. If she went back, Crower's crooked courts would put her in prison, and he would keep the land he stole. Wade stood firm. He told Nora, "You are not going anywhere." Then he looked that young deputy square in the eye. He explained that the charges were a sham and that they were challenging the order. He made it plain and simple. If the deputy wanted to arrest Mrs. Callahan, he would have to go through him and every man on that ranch first. Wade asked him if he really wanted to be the man who started a war between two territories over a fraudulent piece of paper. The deputy was clearly in over his head and wanted no part of that kind of trouble. Arthur then stepped in, offering his legal weight. He warned the deputy that arresting Nora based on these lies would make him a party to Crower's crimes. Caught between Wade's steel and Arthur's logic, the deputy finally relented. He agreed to wire his sheriff and explain the situation, buying them precious time. As soon as he left, Wade and Arthur got to work. Wade sent telegrams to federal judges and influential ranchers. Arthur drafted emergency filings, betting everything on their expert in Chicago, a man named Whitmore, who was analyzing the forged documents. The next 2 days were filled with tense anticipation. On the third day, a telegram finally arrived from Whitmore. With trembling hands, Arthur read it aloud. The news was better than they could have hoped. The expert was 95% certain the signatures were forgeries. This was the proof they needed, the kind that would stand up in any honest court. But before they could even celebrate, a large group of riders appeared heading for the ranch. It was not more lawmen. It was 20 townspeople from Ash Hollow, with Mayor Henderson leading the way. The mayor declared that the town had heard about the bogus arrest warrant and they were not going to stand for it. One by one, people stepped forward, telling their own stories of how Crower had cheated them out of their property using the exact same methods. It was a clear pattern of fraud. Wade listened, then told them about the expert proof they had just received. Mayor Henderson saw their path forward. He offered to take a copy of the evidence and hand-deliver it to the governor in Cheyenne himself. This would bypass all of Crower's cronies and put the matter before honest men with real authority. Wade helped the townspeople write down their official testimonies. Nora was surrounded by folks offering support and sharing their own stories of being cheated by Crower. They were angry that he had been preying on the weak for so long. For months, Nora had felt completely alone in her fight. Now, she was part of a whole community standing up for what was right. By that evening, Mayor Henderson was on his way to Cheyenne with a mountain of evidence against Crower. Arthur filed motions in 3 different courts, arguing that the arrest warrant for Nora was just a trick to stop their fraud investigation. Telegrams were sent to lawmen and politicians all over the region. The message was simple. Victor Crower's schemes were out in the open, and powerful people were demanding justice. The response was quicker than anyone expected. Within 48 hours, the territorial marshal put a stop to the arrest warrant. A federal prosecutor in Denver announced his own investigation. The judge who first signed the warrant, realizing he had been tricked, officially withdrew it. Ever see a bully get what is coming to them? This story is about that. For weeks, a swindler named Victor Crower made Nora Callahan's life a living nightmare, stealing her land with lies. But she decided to fight back, and now the law was finally closing in on him. We all figured he would just run. Instead, he did something shocking. 5 days later, Crower rode right up to the Harlow Ranch, bold as you please, and asked to talk. Nora watched from the porch, her heart pounding. This was the man who had destroyed her home. He looked respectable, maybe 45 years old, but his eyes were as cold as a snake's, sizing everyone up like they were his next meal. Crower got off his horse and tried to act like a gentleman. He told Wade it was all just a big misunderstanding. Wade was not having any of it. He said, "There is no misunderstanding. We have proof your documents are fakes, and we have testimony from all the other folks you cheated." Crower just smiled and pulled a paper from his coat. He offered a deal. Nora could have her land back, free and clear, but only if she dropped all the charges and told everyone it was just a simple disagreement. Arthur, the lawyer, just laughed right in his face. He said, "You are offering to return what you stole in exchange for us letting you keep stealing from everyone else. That is not a settlement." Then Crower looked straight at Nora, trying to sweet-talk her. "Mrs. Callahan," he said, "I am offering you the chance to get your home back. All you have to do is sign a paper." But Nora walked right off that porch and up to him. She finally saw him for what he was, a coward who preyed on people he thought were weak. Her voice did not shake one bit. "You stole my land because you thought I was an easy target," she said. "You were wrong. Your offer is worthless. I want my property restored by the law, and I want you to face charges for what you did to me and to all the others." Crower's friendly mask finally dropped. His face turned ugly with pure rage as he snarled, "You are making a big mistake." That was all Wade needed to hear. He stepped right up to Crower and said in a low voice, that sounded like a threat, "You should leave my property now before I have you arrested." For a long second, it seemed like things might get real ugly, but Crower backed down. He got on his horse and rode off, stiff with anger. The moment he was gone, Wade sent his best men to follow him. Crower did not get far. 2 days later, the territorial marshals arrested him trying to catch a stagecoach out of town. They found a briefcase full of forged deeds and detailed records of his crimes. He had all the proof they needed to put him away for a long, long time. The news about Crower finally came. He was locked up in Cheyenne, facing a world of trouble for mail fraud and theft. They figured more charges were coming once they sorted through his papers. The judge set his bond at $50,000, but with all his money frozen, he was stuck right where he belonged. For the first time in months, a heavy weight lifted from Nora's chest. Arthur assured her, "His power to hurt anyone is gone for good. I've already filed to have that phony deed on your land canceled. It's just a matter of time." Wade poured a round of whiskey for everyone, even Nora, and raised his glass. "To justice," he said, "and to the grit it takes to fight for it." The burn of the drink mixed with the relief, and the land she thought was lost forever was finally coming back home. In the weeks that followed, the full story of Crower's swindles came to light, with 19 families getting word their land would be returned. People who had been too scared to speak up were finally finding their voice. All the while, Nora kept her head down, working the Harlow Ranch just as she'd promised. The summer contract was nearly over, and the cooler nights were a reminder that a decision had to be made. She hadn't spoken to Wade about staying or going. One evening, as she finished her reports, she found him leaning in the doorway. "Your work this summer has been first-rate," he said, getting right to the point. "I'd like to offer you a permanent job. Not a contract, but a real position as land manager, something better." The offer included a proper wage and a new cabin built on higher ground. Nora looked at him, thinking it over. "That's mighty generous, Wade." "It's what you've earned," he said, stepping into the room. "You could go on back to Blue Ridge now, and no one would blame you. Your land is yours again. But if you wanted to stay, you'd be welcome here. Not as a guest, but as a partner." Nora asked quietly, "What if I want both? I need to reclaim my place at Blue Ridge, but I've built something here too." Wade nodded slow. "Then we work out the details. We can make it work for the both of us. This isn't a trap, Nora. It's an opportunity." Nora looked out at the valley that had given her shelter. She thought about the cabin she'd rebuilt, the hard work under the hot sun, and the folks who had stood by her. She thought about Wade, who had offered her a fair deal instead of pity, and had fought for what was right. "I want to stay," she said, turning to face him. "Reclaiming my land is important. Letting that go would feel like giving up. But I want to build a life here too, something I've earned." A look of satisfaction crossed Wade's face. "Then we'll draw up a new agreement, one that fits." Their new contract was honest and clear, built on mutual respect. It gave Nora the freedom to manage her duties at the ranch while rebuilding her life in Blue Ridge. 3 weeks later, the official deed to her Blue Ridge property arrived. Arthur handed it to her with a proud smile. "You're a landowner again," he said. "Free and clear." Holding that paper was about more than just owning land. It stood for everything she had fought for. It was proof that she had not been broken. Now she had a choice, not between one life or the other, but how to live both. On a crisp September morning, Wade loaded a wagon with tools and lumber. Thomas and a couple of ranch hands were riding along to Blue Ridge. They were all going to help Nora build her new home, under a wide open sky that seemed full of promise. Nora got her land back. The house was gone, nothing but scorched ground where it once stood, but the land itself was still beautiful. Wade and his whole crew came out to help her rebuild. They spent the next week putting up a solid new cabin, one that was built to last for generations. Nora worked right alongside them, hammering nails and feeling her life finally coming back together. It was not the life she had planned, but it was a good one, built on honest work and surrounded by good people. When it was all done, Wade gave her one last document. It was a proper land survey, showing the exact boundaries of what was hers. He said simply, "So you know exactly what you have." And for the first time in a long time, she truly did. Truly, Nora understood that Wade's help wasn't about tying her down. It was about giving her a solid place to stand on her own 2 feet. As the aspens turned to gold, signaling the coming winter, she moved into a brand new cabin his men had built. It was warm, sturdy, and had a view of the sunrise that could take your breath away. This wasn't a handout. She had earned every board and nail with pure grit. Meanwhile, that swindler Crower was found guilty on 14 counts of fraud and sent off to federal prison for 8 years. Justice was served, but Nora was already looking forward, not back. One cold December evening, with big soft snowflakes starting to fall, a knock came at her door. It was Wade, holding a bottle of good whiskey and 2 glasses. "Figured you might want some company," he said, his breath making a cloud in the air. "And I needed to thank you proper." Nora waved him inside. "You paid me fairly for my work." He poured them each a drink. "You gave more than just work," Wade said. "You reminded me that being fair isn't a weakness. You proved that courage matters more than connections when you're fighting for what's right." Nora took the glass. "You gave me my life back," she told him. "Only better because I built this one myself." She thought back to the woman she was just months ago, rebuilding a ruin because she had nowhere else to turn. That woman was gone. The road here had been a tough one, full of criminals and courtrooms. But it was worth every step. Wade stopped at the door as he was leaving. "Spring will be here before you know it. Got big plans?" "Rebuilding Blue Ridge first," she smiled. "Then I've got some ideas about sustainable forestry that could help your operation." He grinned. "I'm always interested in talking business with a competent partner. We'll settle the terms when the snow melts." He left, a solid, dependable figure walking through the quiet snowfall. The future was no longer a path laid out for her. It was wide-open country, full of possibilities she would create with her own hands. This life was something she had reclaimed from the ashes of what was stolen. It was real, built on a foundation that no one could forge or fake. The work waiting for her at Blue Ridge and the partnership here in Wyoming felt more solid than any guarantees she'd ever had. As the snow covered the land in a clean white blanket, Nora Callahan slept soundly in the home she had truly earned, dreaming of the good work waiting for her in the spring. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.